My older sister was determined to become the legitimate daughter, and finally was adopted by the eldest madam. However, the eldest madam had a dull personality and only taught her how to use an abacus and read ledgers, knowing nothing about how to win her husband's favor. On the other hand, I, who was raised by my aunt, was skilled in both singing and dancing, and every young gentleman in the capital admired me. The young marquis my sister had been longing for fell in love with me. Even when his mother came over, he said, "Whether one is legitimate or not is irrelevant, what matters most is that my son is happy." My sister went mad and killed me, returning with me to the day we were adopted. This time, she hid behind my father. "Daughter does not wish to be adopted by the eldest madam, I would rather follow Aunt Zhao." I quickly rushed forward and clung to the eldest madam's legs. This time, the good life finally came to me. After Song Ai of the Shin Mansion passed away, she left behind 2 concubine daughters. My sister Shin Wanrong and I, Shin Wanning. At that moment, the 2 of us stood on either side of our father, facing our legitimate mother, Lady Shin. My father said, "Madam, these 2 girls have lost their mother and are truly pitiful. Why not take one of them to raise by your side? I know your health is not good, and taking care of 2 girls at the same time might be too much for you. Coincidentally, Lady Zhao has no children, so she can take care of the other one instead." Before he could finish speaking, my sister had already grabbed my father's sleeve. "Father, I want to go with Lady Zhao." My father was taken aback. He had always favored my sister and knew she had the highest aspirations. Now, she was giving up the opportunity to be the legitimate daughter by the eldest madam's side and instead wanted to go to Aunt Zhao's side on her own. "Ronger, what are you doing?" My sister hurriedly said. "Father, I've really thought it through. Let the eldest madam adopt my younger sister." After saying that, she rushed toward Aunt Zhao's courtyard as if afraid the matter wouldn't be settled. As she passed by me, she gave me a sly smile. "In this life, you take on the role of the eldest daughter who endures all the hardships." I knew why Shin Wanrong said that. In her previous life, she had desperately wanted to be the eldest daughter and had rushed into the First Lady's arms first. But once she entered the First Lady's courtyard, she realized how naive she had been. Although the first wife was the legitimate wife, she didn't receive any of my father's affection, and the entire courtyard was cold and desolate. The first wife herself had no means of competing for favor, and she didn't even bother to try to please my father. She spent her days in the Buddhist hall practicing meditation. Shin Wanrong, who followed the first wife, was strictly disciplined. Before dawn, she was awakened by the maidservants to wash, dress, and attend lessons at the girls' academy in the capital with her teacher. Upon returning home, she was not allowed to rest. The eldest madam would personally supervise her as she practiced abacus calculations and reviewed ledgers, continuing her studies until late into the night. Shin Wanrong endured unbearable suffering, especially when she was overwhelmed by the tedious ledgers. I would follow Zhao Ai to the theater to listen to plays, when she was writing until her hands ached. Aunt Zhao took me out to enjoy the spring scenery and fly kites. Not to mention, when we grew older and attended the elegant gatherings of the young nobles and ladies of the capital, Aunt Zhao dressed me up so beautifully that I was as radiant as a peach blossom. I could sing and play the zither, and the young nobles of the capital all admired me, calling me the most beautiful woman in the capital. But Shin Wanrong was ignored by everyone. She had no talents, and the things the eldest madam taught her were useless in such settings. Fortunately, Shin Wanrong at least had the status of a legitimate daughter, giving her an advantage when it came to matchmaking. Therefore, after she fell in love with the young Marquis Schwamping's family, she refused to eat or drink and knelt before the eldest madam. "Mother, please go to the Marquis Schwamping's family and arrange a marriage for me." The eldest madam paid no heed to her pleas and said coldly, "You are too young for this matter. We will discuss it later." Moreover, Your current state of being crazy will bring you nothing but trouble. As punishment, you must copy the Heart Sutra 30 times in the Buddha Hall. While Shenhuanrong was copying the sutra in the Buddha Hall, I performed the green waist dance that Aunt Zhao had taught me at the literary gathering. Zhao Ai was a former dancer herself, and this green waist dance was her specialty. She taught me personally, and I danced among the flowers. Every gesture and smile graceful and alluring, captivating the hearts of countless noble young men. It was said that on that day, everyone in the capital was enchanted by me, and the young marquis whom Shenhuanrong had been longing for was also moved by my dance. By the time Shenhuanrong finally emerged from the Buddhist hall, the marriage proposal from the marquis's family had already been delivered directly to the Shen household. The one who came to propose marriage was the young marquis's mother. The old lady smiled kindly. I know that the second young lady was raised by her concubine and is a concubine's daughter. That doesn't matter. I am also a concubine's daughter, and I don't care about such distinctions. What matters most is that my son is delighted. Shenhuanrong went mad. She grabbed an oil barrel and rushed into my room, setting it ablaze. We died together in the fire and were reborn together. In this life, my sister chose Zhao's concubine without hesitation. She told me, "In our Shen family, the status of a legitimate daughter is nothing but a joke. Go follow that old hag and suffer." Life with the lady of the house was indeed bitter. My father favored concubines and neglected his wife, a fact known throughout the capital. It was just that in our previous life, we were too young to realize it. Upon entering the lady of the house's room, it felt like a snow cave, with no decorations except for furniture, a Buddha statue, and an incense burner. The first lady closed her eyes in prayer and asked me in the faint scent of sandalwood, "You must be disappointed, aren't you?" In my previous life, given my sister's temperament, she would have written disappointment all over her face the moment she entered the room. Who could have imagined that the once esteemed matriarch, after falling out of favor, would have a room more sparsely furnished than that of a concubine? You should know that Zhao's concubine's room was adorned with gold and jade, lavish and grand, with great prestige. I simply added a piece of agarwood to the incense burner with a calm expression. Daughter believes that a simple and uncluttered room makes the heart bright. After all, no amount of gold and jade can compare to the sunlight streaming in through the window. At that moment, the sunlight was quietly spreading across the floor of the room. The eldest madam raised her eyebrows slightly, turned her gaze toward me, and a hint of surprise flashed in her eyes. She hadn't expected me to say that. "You're an interesting girl," she said softly. "Very well. Since you've chosen to follow me, I'll be the one to raise you. I'm strict, and you may not like what I teach you." I bowed my hands. "Whatever the lady teaches, Ninger will learn." A mountain of ledgers spread out before me, with an abacus placed on the table. The eldest lady held a ruler, her expression cold. "Focus. If you lose concentration more than 3 times, I will strike your palm." Learning to read ledgers was indeed tedious. Unlike poetry and literature, these numbers were headache-inducing. What was income? What was expenditure? Just calculating them clearly was already difficult enough, let alone analyzing them. I often felt drowsy, and at such times, the eldest madam's ruler would land on my palm. Actually, she didn't hit me hard, but I still jolted awake immediately. The eldest madam put away the ruler and whispered, "It's hard work, isn't it?" I shook my head, thought for a moment, then nodded. "It is hard work." The eldest madam's eyes darkened. I continued, "But I know that if I don't learn this, when I marry and become a mistress of the household, everyone will take advantage of my ignorance to bully me and deceive me. That would be even harder. People must endure hardships. A daughter would rather endure the hardships of learning than the hardships of ignorance." The eldest madam raised her eyebrows slightly. She was actually a very beautiful woman, her features still hinting at her former delicate beauty. But now, dressed in plain robes and devoted to Buddhism, she carried a heavy air of melancholy. I actually liked her very much. Though she was always indifferent toward me. She would quietly come in the middle of the night during the changing seasons to tuck the blankets around me and then slip away silently. But my father didn't like her, and he rarely came to our courtyard. That evening, my father finally came. He would visit the eldest madam once a month, as a courtesy to his legitimate wife. On such days, the servants in the courtyard would bustle about joyfully, and the atmosphere was much livelier than usual. But this time, my father had not been seated for even half an hour when singing could be heard from outside the courtyard. Her hair like raven feathers. Her bangs trimmed like a knife. Small lotus flowers on her narrow forehead. She dares not comb her hair, fearing her mother's suspicion. She cannot help but pin a golden hairpin, half loose and half askew. My father couldn't help but ask the servants, "Who is singing?" The servants replied, "It's Aunt Zhao teaching Miss Rong to sing." Moments later, Aunt Zhao entered, trailing a fragrant breeze. She was dressed up in her finest attire, leading the equally adorned Shen Wanrong. Did Shen Lang hear Rong sing? Is she better than I was back then? My father's brows slightly raised, back then. When we first met at the pavilion in the lake. You sang the same song. Zhao Ai blushed shyly. I didn't expect Shen Lang to remember. My voice isn't what it used to be. But at least I can teach these songs to my daughter, Ronger. Please ask your father to come to the room and sing it again. Shen Wanrong immediately approached obediently, pulling my father's sleeve. Father, Auntie and I both missed you. There's tea and fruit prepared in the courtyard. Would you like to eat while listening to me sing? She and Aunt Zhao stood on either side of me, smiling charmingly. In no time at all, my father had been dragged away. The room of the eldest madam was left in complete silence. The young maids couldn't help but look dejected. The master only came once a month, and he had been taken away. Madam, should we serve the dishes or not? Many of tonight's dishes were specially prepared by the kitchen upon hearing that the master was coming. Before the lady could speak, I stood up. Serve them. Why not? I said. My father won't eat them. So we will. What? Does that mean we can't even eat if the men aren't here? Serve everything. Today there's pearl-stuffed Ada morals. Right? That's my favorite dish. I could eat an entire bowl by myself. The maids were inspired by my words and immediately began serving the dishes. And the atmosphere in the room once again became lively. The eldest madam glanced at me, then smiled rarely after a long time. Good girl. You're a credit to your family. From then on, the eldest madam often had the kitchen prepare this dish of pearl stir-fried Ada mortals. I ate countless bowls. Yet I never saw my father again. He stayed almost every day with Aunt Zhao. Whenever the mansion received any new delicacies or toys, he would first give them to Aunt Zhao and Shen Wanrong. During the day, Shen Wanrong saw me and smiled so broadly that her earrings jingled. Did you see that? What does being the legitimate daughter matter? Wherever father's heart lies, that's where one lives in dignity and respect. Your old woman is a worthless creature. You'll just end up learning from her and becoming a worthless creature yourself. She waited to see me break down in tears, but I remained composed and replied calmly. Sister, have you ever considered that singing little songs is something only actors and entertainers do? Zhao Ai is letting you sing little songs to curry favor now. But she'll only use you more in the future. Shen Wanrong's expression changed. But in an instant, she laughed. You're just jealous. Wait and see, you'll suffer even more in the future. After saying that, she turned and left. But in truth, I wasn't lying to her. In my previous life, Aunt Zhao had treated me the same way. She taught me to sing songs, dance, and perform various talents for my father. At that time, there were only the eldest madam and Aunt Zhao in the mansion. The eldest madam was not favored, So Aunt Zhao relied on these talents to keep my father by her side. But later, my father took in a young and beautiful concubine, and these talents were no longer enough. Zhao Ai had no choice but to resort to more extreme measures. She poisoned me, causing me to vomit and have diarrhea. She smeared pig fat on the floor where I practiced dancing, deliberately causing me to fall and injure myself. When I was sick and injured, she would go to my father, crying pitifully and begging him to come see me, using this method to keep him by her side. Those years were like a nightmare for me. From Aunt Zhao, I saw clearly that if one relies on a man's love, one must spend one's entire life fighting other women for that love. In the end, there will always be a loser. But the eldest madam didn't fight. Yet she didn't lose either. In that snow-white room, the estate manager and shop owners came and went, all showing her great respect, not daring to treat her lightly. The maids, servants, and laborers all followed orders and were utterly loyal to her. If I could live another life, I would be such a mistress of the house. Thus, Shen Wanrong continued to learn singing, dancing, and flirting with Zhao Ai. Meanwhile, while I was learning to manage the accounts and household affairs from the eldest madam, I made a new request. "Madam, I wish to learn swordplay." The madam was taken aback. Indeed, there was a precious sword in her room. From the scattered words of the servants, I pieced together the madam's past. She had once been the daughter of a military family. At 15 she had wielded a sword to fight through rebel forces and deliver a message to her father and brothers trapped in the city. However, her father died in battle, and her elder brother, after marrying his wife, hastily married her off to my father, a fifth-rank civil official. The past was buried in dust, and the sword lay quietly gathering dust. In my previous life, Ronger was terrified of that sword. But I found it fascinating. "Please teach me how to use the sword." I looked at the lady, who remained expressionless, and my heart grew increasingly anxious. I did not know whether the sword represented honor or sorrow to her. After a long time, the lady turned away coldly, leaving me with only her back. Just as I was dejected, thinking that was her refusal, the lady called out from afar, "Come to the courtyard. Show me your horse stance." From that day on, I followed the lady in sword training. We trained in the harsh winters and the sweltering summers. Spring came and went, and before I knew it, I had grown into a young woman. One day, I was practicing swordplay by the lake. The sword's glow flew up, spinning around the peach blossom branches. And moments later, all the flower stems fell to the ground, leaving only neat, clean cuts. I knew I had mastered it. Suddenly, cheers rang out behind me. I turned around sharply and realized that a group of people had come from behind the rocks without me noticing. They were a group of young nobles out for a spring outing. Among them was my older sister, Shen Wanrong. It must be said that Shen Wanrong was indeed the most outstanding young noblewoman of her generation. Today, she wore a peach-red silk dress, more vibrant than the peach blossoms themselves. The young nobles gathered around her, showering her with attention. This was something she had never experienced in her previous life. However, just as she was about to be swept away by the compliments, the young men noticed me practicing swordplay by the lake. The leader among them exclaimed, "In ancient times, there was a beauty named Gong Sunshur, whose sword dance captivated the world. Now that we have seen this beauty, she surpasses even Gong Sunshur." Upon hearing this, the other young men echoed his praise. No one paid any attention to Shen Wanrong beside me. Shen Wanrong glared at me, her eyes so dark they seemed ready to spill tears. That day, after practicing swordsmanship, I hurriedly took a bath and heard commotion at the door. "Miss Rong's hairpin is missing. Search thoroughly." I wiped the water from my hair and stepped out, colliding head-on with Shen Wanrong, who was accompanied by a group of maids and servants. I said coldly, "What are you doing?" She glanced at me and said softly to those around her, "I know Ninger wouldn't steal my things. It's just to avoid suspicion that we have to search her room as well." The maids, upon receiving the order, rushed into my room and began searching frantically. Moments later, someone emerged holding the hairpin. "Miss, we found it. It's in the second Mrs. Vanity table." At that very moment, my father returned home from an outing. Hearing the commotion, he couldn't help but walk in. "What's going on?" As soon as he entered, Shinwanrong burst into tears. "Sister, I know you envy me and Auntie for being more loved by father, having better food and clothes. But you shouldn't steal my hairpin. This is Auntie's family heirloom. When she found out it was missing today, she fainted on the spot and is still unconscious. Father, please avenge my aunt." In the ancestral hall, several servants were holding me down. My father sat high on the main seat, with the wronged and sobbing Aunt Zhao and Shinwanrong by his side. For some reason, looking at the two of them crying as if they were carved from the same mold, I found it particularly amusing and couldn't help but laugh out loud. My father flew into a rage. "What are you laughing at? You stole something and you're laughing? Having a daughter like you is a disgrace to the Shin family. I should beat you to death with a stick today." I raised my head and glared at this man who was my blood relative. I had no doubt that he would really beat me to death. The Shin family would never kill their legitimate daughter. But in the end, I wasn't the eldest wife's biological daughter. My birth mother was just a concubine. Moreover, the eldest wife had always treated me coldly, and I didn't feel any affection from her. Zhao Ai sobbed and gasped, clutching her chest. "Shenlang, you know this hairpin was left to me by my mother. It's an item from the imperial palace of the previous dynasty. It's priceless. Even if it were the most valuable object. If Ning girl liked it, I would have given it to her willingly. But why did she steal it? If word gets out, the reputation of the Shin family's daughter will be ruined. And what will happen to my daughter's marriage?" As Zhao Ai spoke, she fainted again. Shinwanrong hurriedly supported her and helped her catch her breath. My father stared at me for a long time before coldly ordering, "Bring out the family law." According to the family law, theft is punished with 30 lashes. Each lash would tear the skin open. 30 lashes would leave one either dead or crippled for life. Just as the situation was about to escalate, a cold voice suddenly rang out from the doorway. "I'll see who dares." The eldest madam walked in. She had gone to bed early and should have been asleep at this hour. I didn't expect her to come. The eldest madam walked over to me and looked at my father coldly. "Sir, the authorities investigate cases based on facts and justice. They don't impose punishment without hearing both sides." My father's face turned pale. Aunt Zhao immediately burst into tears. "How is the matter not clear? The stolen goods were found in Miss Ning's room. Just because she is the mistress's concubine, does that mean the mistress must protect her?" Aunt Zhao was not afraid of the First Lady. Over the years, my father had favored his concubines and neglected his wife. So Aunt Zhao had always believed that she was the most honored woman in the mansion. As for my mother, she was just a worthless mistress who was not favored by her husband and lived in a corner of the mansion. Therefore, even if she faced her directly, she was not afraid. However, the eldest madam, who usually wore plain clothes and spoke little, suddenly turned her head and looked at Aunt Zhao. In that instant, an overwhelming aura emanated from her. "Kneel down." Aunt Zhao froze. The eldest madam spoke slowly and clearly. "You worthless thing. Take your daughter and kneel down together." Zhao's concubine looked at my father for help. "Shenlang." But my father did not speak. Instead, he turned pale and looked at the eldest madam's back. There were about 10 tall and strong men standing outside the room. They did not enter the house but stood silently outside, each as still as a silent iron tower. They were the household troops, brought over from the general's mansion as part of the eldest madam's dowry. I saw them too. In the past, I had thought they were just ordinary servants, calling them Uncle Lou and Uncle Lee, and they would all smile and respond, even buying me sesame candy to eat. Now they were all armed, standing silently, each a warrior who had fought alongside the old general on the battlefield, seeing blood and killing enemies. My father's hands trembled. He stammered to Aunt Zhao, the mistress spoke. And you dared to argue back. That is indeed disrespectful. Kneel down and apologize. Aunt Zhao stared at my father in disbelief. Father, kneel down. Zhao Ai trembled in fear and reluctantly knelt down, dragging Shen Wanrong with her. But she still refused to give up. She raised the hairpin and handed it to the eldest madam. Madam, this is truly the stolen item found in Ning Girl's room. It was left to me by my mother. It's an item from the former imperial concubine, and such things can no longer be purchased on the market. The eldest madam took the hairpin from Zhao Ai's hand, narrowed her eyes, and examined it carefully. The next moment, she threw it to the ground. What a worthless piece of junk. The room fell silent. Everyone was stunned. Zhao Ai had been living in the Shen mansion for over a decade and no one had ever dared to throw her things away. Zhao Ai herself was also stunned. She stared at the hairpin lying on the ground, too shocked to even cry. The eldest madam coldly looked at my father. Master, do you think my daughter, Lu Jiangyun, would stoop so low as to steal such a thing? Seeing my father speechless, the eldest madam turned her gaze back and ordered her attendant. Wu Mama, bring my jewelry box. The eldest madam rarely dressed up. She usually wore a plain robe, her long black hair tied back with a wooden hairpin. Even I didn't know she had a jewelry box. Wu Ma quickly brought 2 servants, who carried in a large sandalwood box. When it was opened, the room was filled with dazzling light. My father's newly married concubine, Lady Meng, who had been a palace maid before being sent out, had seen the world and was the first to exclaim in astonishment. My goodness! This is jade of the quality offered as tribute from the western regions. That jade field was exhausted decades ago. I've only seen bracelets of this quality at the old Empress Dowager's place. There are even coral beads. A single bead like this can be exchanged for 10 gold ingots in the market. Yet the lady has such a large coral bead necklace. Aunt Zhao's face went blank. Shen Wanrong stared blankly at the box filled with rare treasures. Her eyes betrayed confusion, shock, and resentment. In her previous life, she had spent so many years by the eldest madam's side. Yet she had never known that such treasures were hidden in that snow-white room. The eldest madam ignored everyone else and simply turned to me, beckoning with her hand. Come here. Pick a few items. After a moment, I finally reacted and hurriedly waved my hands. These are too valuable, I can't accept them. The eldest madam laughed lightly. You dare not take even a few pieces of jewelry? You are my daughter, everything I have will eventually be inherited by you. In an instant, all the envious glances in the room were fixed on me. Shen Wanrong glared at me, her eyes almost bleeding. Zhao Ai's face was ashen, but she still struggled to make one last plea. Madam, I know that Ning girl grew up with you, living a life of luxury and privilege, equal to a legitimate daughter. My Ronger can't compare to her. You want to favor Ning girl, and no one dares to defy you. But does that mean that in this vast Shen mansion, the mistress and her legitimate daughter can act however they please, while the lives of us concubines and their daughters don't matter at all? The eldest madam looked at Zhao Ai, and suddenly she smiled. When the eldest madam spoke coldly, Zhao Ai had never been afraid of her. But now, as the eldest madam smiled, a smile as calm as could be, Zhao Ai shuddered involuntarily. The eldest madam fixed her gaze on Zhao Ai but spoke to Wu Ma. Bring her up. Wu Ma understood and turned to leave. Moments later, 2 servants dragged a disheveled maidservant into the room. Shen Wanrong gasped, Xiao He. Zhao Ai pinched Shen Wanrong hard, and Shen Wanrong managed to swallow her words. But her body trembled uncontrollably. She couldn't help but tremble, for the maid named Xiao He was lying on the ground, her face covered in blood, with wooden planks wedged between her fingers, her flesh mangled and bloody. The women in the room screamed in terror, turning away in horror. Only the eldest madam remained composed, speaking in a steady voice. This afternoon, Wu Mama saw this maid running around the courtyard, making a commotion to distract the guards on duty. She later appeared in the inner chambers and was seen by a passing servant, looking very panicked. I felt something was amiss, so I took it upon myself to interrogate her on behalf of the master. This is the recorded confession, which Xiao He has signed and sealed. The master may review it. The eldest madam gently waved her hand, and Wu Ma presented the statement with the fingerprint to my father, as if anticipating how Zhao Ai and the others would try to defend themselves. The eldest madam sealed off all possible escape routes to prevent anyone from claiming I coerced a confession. During the interrogation, I specifically invited the elders of the Shen family, as the matriarch of the main branch, to witness the proceedings. They can all attest that this young maid spoke the truth. My father held Xiao He's statement in one hand, while the other trembled uncontrollably. He never imagined the eldest madam could be so cunning. This woman had been quiet and reserved since she married into the family. He found her boring and rarely favored her, so she retreated to the Buddhist hall to practice meditation. Yet at this moment, he realized that this woman, who had always kept to herself, had already handled everything. She had been vigilant and had already identified the traitor. By the time the turmoil erupted, she had already interrogated everyone involved. Yet she remained calm, waiting silently for the other side to make the first move. Now that the matter had escalated to the point where even the clan elders of the Shen family had been summoned to witness the interrogation, he could no longer protect Zhao Ai and Shen Wanrong, no matter how much he wanted to. The young maid was so scared she was frantically kowtowing. Master, spare my life. Master, spare my life. It was all Miss Rong and Aunt Zhao who ordered me to do it. They said they would give me 300 taels of silver after the job was done. My father's face turned pale. He lowered his head and looked at Aunt Zhao and Shen Wanrong kneeling on the ground. Shen Wanrong was trembling like a frightened quail. But Zhao Ai, having seen more of the world, looked at my father with tears streaming down her face. Using all her skills to play the victim, Master, I have served you for over a decade. Please save me. The eldest madam interrupted Zhao Ai and walked directly to my father. I have one question for you. Master, stealing is a serious crime, and according to family law, it deserves 30 lashes. What about framing someone else for a crime? My father looked at Aunt Zhao, who was crying so hard she was about to faint, then turned to the First Lady. He remained silent, his silence a plea. Madam, my father whispered, they did wrong, but they didn't go so far as to frame someone else. These words caused even the servants to look on in disbelief. My father favored his concubine and neglected his wife. His bias had reached an unforgivable extent. I was accused of theft, yet the truth had not been established, and I was to be punished according to family law. Zhao Ai and Shen Wanrong had framed someone with clear evidence, yet they wanted to let them off lightly. Everyone looked angry, but the eldest madam's face remained calm. She said indifferently, "Oh, is that how you see it, sir?" Before my father could answer, the eldest madam had already gathered her skirt and turned to leave, supporting Wu Mama's hand as she walked out. I had hoped that family matters should not be aired in public, and that you could give a fair explanation within the household. But now it seems that the master is so busy with government affairs that he has lost his mind. This family matter is impossible to resolve. Since that is the case, then let's report it to the authorities. Before she could finish speaking, The color drained from my father's face. He shouted, "Stop her!" The servants of the Shin mansion rushed forward to block the eldest madam's path. However, the eldest madam merely raised her eyelids, and a dozen or so palace guards immediately stepped forward, shielding her at the center. They were the old general's former subordinates, loyal to the madam rather than the master. The ordinary household servants were terrified by these towering palace guards and instinctively stepped back. As the lady was about to step out of the courtyard, my father finally ran out of options. He covered his face and let out a heart-wrenching cry. Someone dragged Zhao and that unfilial daughter away and beat them. Under the moonlit sky, I sat with the lady in the courtyard, peeling water chestnuts. From the distant courtyard, the agonized screams of Zhao's concubine and Shenwanrong echoed in the night. The eldest madam wiped her hands and said indifferently, "You must be laughing at me inside. You have such ability. Yet you've spent all these years not fighting for anything, living such a pitiful life." I placed the peeled water chestnuts into a snow-white porcelain dish. "Madam doesn't fight because my father isn't worth fighting for." After a moment of silence, I added, "But madam, if you love someone, you should still fight for them." The madam's hand suddenly froze. The night was as cold as water, and the moonlight stretched out endlessly. After a long time, I heard her sigh softly. "You know." "Yes, I know. Over the years, I have accompanied the eldest madam to a Buddhist temple in the suburbs of the capital to burn incense, and I have always seen a monk there. The monk always wore a half-worn gray robe, but his features were as stunning as a landscape painting. People called him Master Chenyi. Some said that Master Chenyi had once been the most outstanding young general in the capital. Once clad in white armor and full of vigor, he and the lady had grown up together, and that sword was the token of their love that he had given her. "Ah Yun, wait for me to return, and I will marry you." However, on that campaign, 10,000 soldiers perished in the western regions, and the young general never returned. The lady of the house had considered dying with him, but in the end, she could not bring herself to do so. She married another man, but from that day forward, she was nothing more than a lifeless shell. 10 years later, the young general returned. He had crawled back from the depths of hell, clinging to life, desperate to see the woman he loved once more. However, the woman he had once loved had already married another man. The young general did not disturb her. He shaved his head in a Buddhist temple on the outskirts of the capital and took the monastic name Chenyi. All of this was merely rumor. I witnessed the eldest lady and Master Chenyi meet in the Buddhist temple with my own eyes. They bowed to each other from afar, like the moon illuminating the mountains, without entanglement or regret, as if they were two strangers passing by. If not for the rumors, no one would have guessed they knew each other. There was only one time when the eldest lady fell ill, with a high fever that would not subside. No amount of medicine could help. My father was with Aunt Zhao, and the young maidservant went to fetch him several times, but she was blocked by Aunt Zhao's people. Wu Mama was sweating profusely. She held the lady's hand and said, "Please call him. Call him." I stood by holding the medicine bowl, and in an instant, I understood who to call. I handed the bowl to Wu Ma and mounted the fastest horse, racing into the night toward the Buddhist temple on the outskirts of the capital. Master Chenyi arrived. He did not enter the first lady's room but stayed in the adjacent Buddhist hall, striking the wooden fish all night long. The first lady listened to the sound of the wooden fish and gradually recovered. Through the wall, she knew he was there with her. They didn't need to see each other. The same moonlight shone on both of them. At that moment, under the bright moonlight, I held the lady's hand. "Madam, there are some things you think are too late, but they're not too late yet." She looked into the distance, deep in thought. Zhao Ai and Shenwanrong were released after being confined for a month. My father was too biased. He said he had each of them beaten with 30 strokes. But in reality, each stroke was watered down. Zhao Ai and Shen Wanrong screamed terribly at the time. But within half a month, they had already recovered completely. When I saw Shen Wanrong again in private, she was laughing wildly. She said, "Do you think having that old woman backing you up will get you anywhere? Just wait and see. In the end, it's the men who make the decisions in this household. No one here is more powerful than my father." When the news reached the eldest madam, she was by the window trimming the branches of a flower in a vase. Upon hearing Wu Ma's report, she raised her eyebrows but said nothing. Merely reaching out to cut off the most vibrant peony blossom, she looked at the trimmed flower branches, then turned to Wu Ma and said, "Never mind. Throw them out. I don't want any of the flowers in that vase." Wu Ma nodded and led the maids out to carry the flowers away, a smile playing at the corners of her eyes. We all knew that the eldest madam had never gotten rid of Aunt Zhao all these years because my father wasn't worthy of her to take such action. Now, she doesn't even want my father anymore. The days that followed seemed peaceful. The eldest madam began teaching me deeper things. She took me to inspect the estates and shops, letting me see firsthand how she managed the vast estate. During these inspections, I was astonished to discover that the owners of these estates and shops were all the eldest madam herself, with no connection to the Shen family at all. This was utterly shocking. For in our dynasty, a woman's property before marriage belonged to her father and brothers. Even after marriage, all her income went into the family accounts, and the only property she owned was her dowry. So, over the past decade, the First Lady had expanded her dowry countless times over, turning it into the vast estate it was today. My face turned pale, and the lady of the house glanced at me with a sneer. "Look at you. So naive. Do you really think I've done nothing but recite sutras for the past decade? As a woman, one must choose between love and money. Since I have no love left, if I don't earn more, wouldn't I truly become a worthless old woman?" I hurriedly nodded in agreement and was surprised to discover the eldest madam seemed to have become more lively. While I was learning the secrets of wealth from the eldest madam, Shen Wanrong was also busy. Disciples from the opera house came and went like a stream in Zhao's courtyard, with the sound of music never ceasing. I knew that Shen Wanrong was learning the green waist dance. She had become even more beautiful, with snow-white skin and a flower-like face. Years of dance practice had made her figure graceful and supple. When we attended gatherings with the young nobles and ladies of the capital, the young nobles all praised her as the most beautiful woman in the capital. They had once been captivated by my sword skills, but soon discovered that I had a stiff personality and was unwilling to demonstrate my sword skills for them. Shen Wanrong was different. She had so many talents. She could sing, play the pipa, and dance various dances. The young men sighed. Miss Wanrong is truly a woman of both beauty and talent. I wonder who is fortunate enough to marry her and keep her in a golden house. Some even compared her to me. Both are daughters of the Shen family. Yet the second young miss has no talent and is boring. Despite being raised by her stepmother, she now pales in comparison to the eldest young miss. Every time this happened, Shen Wanrong would speak up. "My younger sister is talented. She's skilled at abacus calculations. She probably plans to become an accountant in the future." After saying this, she would laugh heartily with the young men and women around her. Soon, it was time for the elegant gathering in the capital, and Shen Wanrong was determined to win. In my previous life, I was copying sutras in the Buddhist hall, while you were dancing at the gathering. From that moment on, the young marquis fell deeply in love with you. But sister, in this life, the one who can dance the green waist dance is me. What do you have to compete with me? I didn't get angry at all. I lowered my head and fiddled with my abacus. Sister, for the sake of our sisterly bond, I'll give you one last piece of advice. Don't dance the green waist dance. Shen Wanrong smiled and raised her chin. You're really scared. She left triumphantly, and behind her, I shrugged silently. I warned her. She didn't listen. Then it's not my problem. On the day of the elegant gathering, the pavilions and terraces were filled with young nobles and ladies. Among them sat Chu Muyuan, the young Marquis of Marquis Xianping, dressed in black robes. His handsome features were so striking that one couldn't look away. Yet he exuded an unmistakable aura of ruthlessness. Those who feared him called him the Demon King, while those who loved him would give anything for a single smile from him. My sister, Shen Wanrong, clearly belonged to the latter group. Midway through the elegant gathering, as the sound of stringed instruments filled the air, Shen Wanrong appeared in the center of the pavilion, dressed in a light silk gown. She moved gracefully, swaying her sleeves, her waist supple and alluring. This was Zhao Ai's ultimate weapon. She had always believed that all men in the world would be captivated by this dance. The young nobles at the banquet indeed showed signs of being enchanted. However, as the initial excitement faded, the young men began to look at each other. Their expressions shifted from curiosity to shock, and finally to fear. Shen Wanrong did not notice this. After finishing her dance, she curtsied gracefully. This dance is called green waist. She expected a thunderous applause. However, the hall fell into complete silence. Then, the first young gentleman stood up. Excuse me. I have something to attend to. I must take my leave. Immediately, another young gentleman followed. I will accompany my elder brother. One after another, the other young gentlemen also rose from their seats, as if afraid of being the last to leave, rushing out of the gathering in a hurry. Shen Wanrong stood there dumbfounded. She did not understand what had gone wrong. Among all the young nobles present, Chu Muyuan was the last to leave. He stood there in silence for a long time before getting up and walking toward Shen Wanyong. The usually cold-hearted young nobleman showed a gentle expression for the first time in his life. Shen Wanyong felt her heart racing wildly. Young Marquis. However, the next moment, Chu Muyuan walked past her. He walked past her as if she weren't there, heading toward me, who was standing behind her. He asked, "Have we met before?" Chu Muyuan didn't remember anything from his previous life. He only felt a sense of familiarity toward me. However, even that slight familiarity was enough to terrify Shen Wanrong, especially since she couldn't figure out why the green waist dance hadn't had the effect she had expected. As soon as I returned to the Shen mansion, she grabbed me by the arm. "Was it you? Did you do something beforehand?" She screamed at me. "Did you secretly practice the green waist dance behind my back? Did you show it to him beforehand?" She tried to rush forward and tear at me. But in the next instant, the door to the room was suddenly kicked open. My father burst in with a group of servants. He pointed at Shen Wanrong, his hands trembling. "Tie this good-for-nothing up." Shen Wanrong was held down by the servants, struggling desperately and crying out to her father, "Father! Father! What did I do wrong?" My father had spoiled Shen Wanrong for over a decade, and this was the first time she had ever seen him look so terrifying. "How dare you ask? How dare you ask?" My father's beard was trembling, and his pupils dilated slightly from intense anger and fear. "What did you dance at the gathering?" Shen Wanrong stammered. "The green waist dance." The green waist dance she had longed for her entire life. Once she learned it, she believed it would lead her to a path of love. But she didn't know. When the previous dynasty fell, our founding emperor, while drunk, had sighed to the court dancers. "The courtesans know not the sorrow of a fallen nation." Across the river, they still sing the Afterglow Flowers song. At that time, the dancers were performing the green waist dance. From then on, this dance, extremely soft, seductive, delicate, and vibrant, was deemed the decadent music of a fallen nation. In truth, the women in the brothels still knew how to dance it, as the emperor's words were merely spoken in a moment of intoxication, and the court had never officially banned the dance. But Shinwanrong was the daughter of an official. Her actions did not merely represent herself but also the attitude and reputation of her entire family. As the daughter of the Shin family, she dared to play music and dance the green waist dance at a literary gathering where one should have been discussing poetry and literature. In the past, it might have been overlooked. But now the nation is in turmoil, with battles raging on all fronts. No matter how much my father dotes on her, he cannot protect her now. Shinwanrong was confined to the ancestral hall for 7 days and nights. When I went to see her, she was emaciated, her once luminous eyes now sunken and hollow. She didn't notice me and was murmuring to the air, "Go tell my father. He wronged me. He wronged me." This dance was ordered by Aunt Zhao. If there was a problem, how could Aunt Zhao not know? I walked in and whispered. Aunt Zhao might truly be unaware. She was merely a dancer from the streets, who had been brought into the mansion by my father due to her beauty and flattery. But her status was limited to that of a concubine who never left the mansion. A concubine's perspective is inherently limited. Or perhaps Zhao Ai actually knows the truth. But she needs to take this gamble. Over the years, she's been using the Shin Mansion's name to engage in shady business outside. Now she's deeply in debt. And she knows that if her crimes are exposed, her father won't spare her. So she needs you to marry into a prestigious family and become her new lifeline. Shinwanrong stared at me blankly. After a long time, she shook her head, her hair disheveled, murmuring, "No, this isn't right. In the last life, you clearly danced too. Why? Did you dance the green waist dance and gain Chu Muyuan's love?" I looked at her with pity. Finally, I revealed the truth, word by word. "Sister, have you ever thought about it? Chu Muyuan loved me, but it wasn't because of the green waist dance at all. In my previous life, I refused to dance the green waist dance. Although I was raised by Aunt Zhao, I would sneak into the school whenever I had the chance to learn everything about the dance. I knew that if I ever danced it, I would not only become a laughingstock throughout the capital but also risk bringing disaster upon my entire family. But Zhao Ai forced me. She grabbed my hand, "Ninger, your father has taken another concubine into the house. The Shin Mansion is about to have no place for us. Trust me. As long as you dance this dance in front of those noble young masters, someone will surely marry you, whether as a wife or a concubine. At least before you can no longer dance this dance, we'll have another 10 or so years of good life." I still refused. But Aunt Zhao tied up the young maidservant by my side and threatened me with their lives. "If you won't dance? Fine. Then living is pointless anyway. Let's kill these maidservants who have served you for years and have them buried with you." I made Aunt Zhao release the maidservant, then dance the green waist dance at the gathering. As I danced, Chu Muyuan despised me. He believed I was a woman who would stoop to anything to please a man. But when he saw that after the dance, I didn't speak to any of the young men present but went alone to the back garden. He was stunned. When Chu Muyuan rushed over, he saw the words I had written on the wall. "Not for love of the world, but led astray by a past fate." After copying down these final words, I had already hung a white silk sash around my neck, intending to end my despairing life. At that moment, Chu Muyuan finally realized that behind the green waist dance lay countless unavoidable hardships. He saved me and then used the influence of Marquis Schwamping's family to suppress the other young masters and ladies present, ensuring they would never mention my performance of the green waist dance outside the mansion. To express my gratitude, I gave him a sword tassel I had made with my own hands. In return, he presented me with the 4 treasures of the study. Later, he used that sword to fight on the front lines of battle. I used the 4 treasures of the study to write my longing for him in the rear. In the end, Chu Muyuan returned victorious, brought the 3 letters and 6 gifts, and sought to marry me. The marriage notice read, "I wish to marry you as my wife and unite our hearts forever." But we were unable to unite our hearts forever. In a previous life, when Chu Muyuan returned victorious, he only saw my charred remains, blackened by the flames. On that day, the once invincible Marquis Xianping emerged from the Shin mansion, stumbling and disheveled, his figure resembling that of a stray dog. Everyone knew his fiancée was dead, so matchmakers came flooding to the mansion, urging him to move on and find a new bride. Chu Muyuan drove them all away and went alone to a Buddhist temple on the outskirts of the capital. The temple had 3,000 steps, and he knelt and bowed his way up each one, lighting the eternal lamp. It was not love for the world, but a mistake of past karma. Flowers bloom and wither in their own time. It is always the master of the East. To go is to go. To stay is to stay. If I can fill my head with mountain flowers, do not ask where I go. Chu Muyuan suddenly burst into tears. He knelt before the hall filled with gods and Buddhas, bowing his head again and again, begging them to save him and give him another chance. He bowed until his forehead was covered in blood, until a gray figure stopped before him. The one-armed monk looked down at him with a pitying expression. The greatest suffering in the world is longing. Enough. I will grant you your wish. Chu Muyuan did not tell me any of this. It was Master Chen Yi who told me. That day, he had beaten the wooden fish all night for the lady of the house. As he left the Shin mansion, he smiled at me, who was seeing him off. Young lady, my suffering lies in separation while still alive. The man who begged you for a new life suffers from parting in death. Fortunately, you now have the chance to meet again. Please cherish this precious connection. Under the moonlight, Master Chen Yi bowed his hands in prayer. He himself loved separation and longed for what he could not have. Yet he still wished for all lovers to find happiness. At that moment, I looked at the dazed Shen Wanrong and whispered, "Do you understand now? Sister, so-called singing and dancing talents only win temporary favor. But love is never that simple. It requires two hearts to understand and commit to each other. My connection with him may have begun with the green waist dance, but his love for me had nothing to do with it. From beginning to end, the outcome would never have changed. He didn't love you because of anything else, it was simply because you weren't me. Still, I must thank you. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have been adopted by the eldest madam, nor would I have learned of Master Chen Yi's story. Therefore, the happiness and stability of this life I owe entirely to your kindness." Shen Wanrong had gone mad. In the dead of night, she escaped from the ancestral hall where she was confined and rushed to Zhao Ai's room, gripping her by the throat. I thought that for 2 entire lifetimes, the person she hated most was me. But in the end, I discovered that the person she truly hated most was Zhao Ai. In the previous life, when Zhao Ai came to the Marquis family to ask for my hand in marriage, she ran to the eldest madam's courtyard to show off her power. She said she was more favored by the eldest madam, and her daughter was more ambitious than the eldest madam's daughter. Ninger danced the green waist dance I taught her, and the young Marquis fell in love with her at first sight. It's not me boasting, but whoever learns this dance can capture the hearts of all men in the world. Shen Wanrong, who was following the eldest madam, heard these words and took them as fact, thus developing an obsession. In this life, to learn this dance, she endured Zhao Ai's exploitation and torment from childhood onward. But in the end, it was all for nothing. Shen Wanrong choked Zhao Ai by the neck, screaming hoarsely. Zhao Ai struggled desperately, cursing back without showing any weakness, "You good for nothing. You're useless yourself, unable to win a man's heart. And now you're blaming me." If I had adopted Ning girl back then, she would have married into a wealthy family by now and brought me along to enjoy the good life. As they fought, they knocked over the candlestick. The flames burned fiercely before dying out, reducing the once golden-laid and jade-carved house to ruins. Zhao Ai and Shen Wanrong both perished in the fire. In just a few months, my father had the room renovated and a new concubine moved in. It was said that this concubine was the best at singing kunku opera, and she often boasted outside. Don't blame the master for spoiling me so much. If anyone can sing the peony pavilion as well as I can, they will capture the hearts of all men in the world. The mess at the Shin mansion has nothing to do with me anymore. A year later, I officially married Chu Muyuan. On the day of my wedding, I wore my wedding gown and bid farewell to my parents. The eldest madam sat in a high place. At this moment, she should have said some proper words according to tradition, such as serving her husband and being filial to her in-laws. But the eldest madam did not say any of these things. She remained silent for a long time before finally whispering softly, "Ninger, be happy." That was something she had never obtained in her entire life. After sending me off, the eldest madam placed a prepared divorce document in front of my father. My father was stunned. After the shock came rage. And he roared, "Lu Jiangyun, have you lost your mind? The Lu family will never allow you to divorce." The eldest madam nodded, "Indeed. That is why I have already returned to the Lu family and severed all ties with them." My father's eyes widened. He couldn't believe it. A woman divorcing her husband and severing ties with her in-laws. How would she survive in this world? After a moment, my father suddenly understood. He pointed at the First Lady. His fingertips trembling, "I get it. You saw your daughter hooking up with the Marquis Schwanping's family and think you have a powerful backer now. Don't you?" The First Lady looked at my father in confusion. "What do I need a backing for? If you're talking about wealth, the businesses I've built over the years are enough to ensure I never go hungry or cold for 8 lifetimes. The Shin family and the Lu family combined aren't as wealthy as I am. If you're talking about safety..." The eldest madam picked up the sword that had been in her room for nearly 20 years, drew it from its sheath, and the snow-white cold light immediately illuminated the room. "Master, instead of worrying about me, you should worry about yourself." The eldest madam finally left the Shin mansion where she had lived for over a decade. She settled all her assets, the Shin mansion's belongings. She wouldn't touch a single thing. And the fields and shops she had acquired, the Shin mansion wouldn't get a single penny of. My father was so enraged that he fell ill in bed. By the time he finally recovered, he found the mansion had fallen into such disrepute it was barely recognizable. With the mistress gone, the remaining concubines were all vain and extravagant, knowing only how to spend money and not how to save it. When it came to vying for favor, they were cunning and scheming. When it came to managing the accounts, they were utterly clueless. My father had no choice but to consider remarrying. However, any decent family in the capital had already heard of his infamous reputation for favoring concubines and neglecting his wife, and none were willing to marry their daughters to him. My father had no other option but to beg the First Lady for forgiveness once more. "Madam, I was wrong in the past. I regret it. I do not wish to divorce you. Let us put the past behind us and return home together. From now on, you will still be the mistress of the Shin household, and no one will dare to surpass you." The First Lady sipped her tea. After a moment, she poured the remaining tea at my father's feet. "This house has had bad feng shui lately. Why are there always evil spirits coming in?" The First Lady said, "Wu Ma, please invite a Taoist priest to perform a ritual when you have time." My father's face turned pale, then red, then pale again. He wanted to explode but couldn't. So Wu Mama escorted him out. After he left, the eldest madam turned to the screen behind her. "All right. Come out." I smiled and walked out. She gave me a cold look. "You're becoming more and more disrespectful. He's your own father. You won't even come out to see him. You just hide and watch him make a fool of himself." I didn't care. Whoever loves me is my blood relative. My own father wanted to kill me over a hairpin. Let whoever loves him take him. So every time it was time to visit my maternal family, I would come to find the First Lady and never go to the Shin mansion. The First Lady still lived in a snow-white room. with only an incense burner and a Buddha statue inside. But I had already recognized its value. I knew the agarwood burning in the incense burner was more valuable than gold. She had always been a wealthy woman in disguise, too lazy to show off her wealth, while the world was too ignorant to recognize her true worth. Mistaking pearls for fish eyes. The First Lady washed her hands, burned incense before the Buddha, and remained as cold and indifferent as ever. She said to me, "Tell me about your recent life at the Marquis's family." As the mistress of the Marquis' family, I immediately transformed back into the student being quizzed by a teacher, daring not to relax for a moment. I bowed my head and reported. Since I took charge of the household affairs, all the shops, residences, and properties have been inventoried. The servants in the mansion are well managed, and a few troublesome ones have been disciplined as a warning to others. Additionally, I have received intelligence that the Emperor is about to establish trade with the western regions. Therefore, I have used my dowry to prepare horses, tea, silk, and porcelain, and have also scouted locations near the official road to open an inn. The profits from these ventures will not be recorded in the Marquis's family's official accounts but will instead serve as a foundation for my daughter's future. I believed I had submitted a satisfactory report. The eldest madam spoke softly. "Who asked you about these things?" "Ah." She looked at me. A long silence filled the room. The eldest madam sighed. "The things I taught you. I know you have learned well. What concerns me are the things I did not teach you." I understood. Lowering my head, I blushed slowly. He treats me very well. Being with him, I am happy every day." The eldest lady finally smiled contentedly. She once told me that as women, we must have either money or love. Now, it is my turn to tell her, why not be a little greedy and have both? The eldest lady looked toward the window, where there was a green jade vase with a branch of blooming red plum blossoms. Outside the window, the night grew darker, and the moonlight shone like silver. A monk in gray robes carried a flower hoe and brought fresh plum blossoms. Before she could finish speaking, my sister had already pulled on my father's sleeve. The eldest lady also bowed. Through the window, I gazed at the vibrant red plum blossoms and faintly saw the youthful figures of a young man and woman. When I return victorious, I will marry Ayun. All right. But don't make me wait too long. Actually, waiting too long isn't a problem. Because no matter how the world changes, those who love each other will always reunite. From this day forward, I will have no regrets, and the mountains and rivers will forever accompany us. The end.